Broadcasting live from the Free Speech Studios. Deep within the city of Fountain. With over 4 years of satisfying the curious mind and looking damn sexy while doing it. Ladies and gentlemen, Phantom Fact Society.
Welcome everyone to Phantom Fact Society, a special not life episode, and we'll get into why that is shortly. For those of us that follow us on X, welcome. It appears that when you talk about Child Protective Services and the person who seems to be most likely responsible for Donald Trump's assassination, that's just how it is. Tonight we have a very special guest, Hadassah Feinberg. Hadassah has been persecuted, I think is too kind of a word. What she's gone through in the state of Pennsylvania, what she uncovered in the process of dealing with corruption against her and her family. And we look forward to talking with Hadassah Feinberg and going over some of these more minute details. So without further ado, let's bring on Hadassah. Hadassah, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming on, because you have been through quite the ordeal. And I mean, just this short period where I've gotten to know you, everything has gone screwy for me as well. And I'm not saying it's because of you, but it just does seem sort of odd that when we talk about this assassination attempt against Donald Trump, which is a big deal, right? We haven't had something like that in my lifetime. I know Reagan, I guess, was the last attempt on a president. But, and Kennedy, they succeeded. So this isn't like some small, and the media's really tried to make it not a big deal. And I think you yourself have put in all this legwork, and I think we're beginning to see why the media doesn't want the truth to come out. Let's start from the beginning, though. You're from Pennsylvania originally, correct?
Correct. I actually moved in March of 2024 to Florida. So prior to that, I was in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
And Harrisburg is that the capital right there, right?
It is the capital.
That is the capital.
Yeah, and Governor Josh Shapiro is part of the Jewish community there.
And you are as well. You're a part of the Jewish community as well. I'm just guessing by the Feinberg last name. So
correct.
Okay. So you now, do you know, like, how big is it when you say Jewish community? Are we talking like 10,000 people? Like how?
No. So what's interesting is that Harrisburg has a small Jewish community, and for those people that understand what small Jewish communities are, everybody knows everything about each other. So it's pretty well known that Josh Shapiro is a fraud, is a criminal, is a liar, and that Ellen Greenberg was also from my Jewish community.
Now, are you talking maybe a couple of hundred people then, would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple hundred. Yeah, it's like, we say Jewish community, but for other people, it's essentially just a church community. It's no different than being a Baptist or Lutheran in the respect that you develop a social circle as you grow up because you attend these same religious ceremonies as all these other people. Now, were you actively involved in the Jewish church or Jewish synagogue?
I was, and that's actually the reason that I got to meet Josh Shapiro in person at one of the events that he held for the Jewish community.
Now, was he not very involved unless it was dealing with political stuff? Is that the type of...
Correct. So Josh Shapiro, I mean, I don't want to speak for his religious, motivation, but he is not very involved in the Jewish community. Obviously, he's very busy doing stuff politically. I do know that he attends synagogue on like the most important holidays. Um, and he had an encounter with Ellen Greenberg's parents. I think it was like August, September of 2023. That's also when I met with him in person at the governor's mansion. He held a event for Sukkot. It's a Jewish holiday, and there was about maybe like 100 of us in the courtyard with him. I have a picture with him and his wife Lori, with my children. So I mean, I wouldn't say we're close, but I know of him from the Jewish community. I've met him in person.
Well,
And
I'm sure when you're that politically aligned like he is, that I mean, if there was someone from our church that was, attorney general and then running for governor, man, everyone would be talking about him, good or bad. I mean, it would be good and bad. There would be the community of people that want to enjoy his power, and the community of people that know who he is. And I think through what you've been through, you've started to understand a little bit of who Josh Shapiro is. And that's sort of what we want to dive into, because what you're not, what you're, and you mentioned this before we went live, but you're not saying, hey, I've got hard evidence here that Josh Shapiro assassinated the president, and here's the secret recording of him admitting to it. You're not saying any of that. You're just saying, I've been looking at Shapiro long before the assassination attempt, and you were tracking his movements from years before. And it just so happened to coincide perfectly with this assassination attempt. Am I saying that correctly?
yeah, Corey, you're right on point. So I filed my first whistleblower complaint. I was working with the Department of Human Services. I was a foster mother. And I filed a complaint against county employees in Dauphin County, which is where Josh Shapiro is, which is where I was from. And I filed a report for their negligence, fraud, and corruption. I actually sent an email to him. He was one of my first contacts that I made. And then after that, my family was targeted. And that's kind of what started my investigation, not just of him, but also the corruption that was occurring in the area. And then I kind of expanded, to seeing how it was occurring across the state, which basically led me to reaching out to President Trump and President Biden in July of 2024. At the very beginning, I sent a letter like, look, this is a massive humanitarian crisis in Pennsylvania. The public corruption is out of control. People are being harmed and we need help. And at the time, I didn't make the connection. I don't know why, but I didn't make the connection between Biden and Shapiro until after the attempted assassination happened. And I was like, oh my God, what was I meddling with, basically? Because I was calling the White House, I was calling the FBI, and I was basically saying, look, I'm going to expose Josh Shapiro's corruption if he's elected VP, with Kamala Harris. And I didn't realize that there was a whole nother scandal that was in the process of happening. And so I kind of, what I believe is I was basically in the wrong place at the wrong time. And
It was not a good time for you to be whistleblowing for the Democrat Party.
No. And
Yeah.
it's unbelievable what happened, like prior to that, during that, and then moving forward. I mean, I've had my phone tapped on July 12th, the day before the attempted assassination. I had no idea that they were going to do that. And I have a text message between me and another whistleblower saying, I think my phone is being tapped. I heard clicking on my phone. And I had never experienced that before. My mom said, like, you need to get another phone. It's all documented. The data is documented. And, looking back, yes, I really believe that that was happening. Now, why do I think that was happening? Well, President Biden knew that I was threatening to basically inform the other side. If he didn't help, I was going to go to President Trump. But I don't think they realized, like, I wasn't in direct connection with President Trump. There was very little that I was able to do, as a small civilian. And I was just trying to be a strong voice and, like, help us kind of thing.
And you don't strike. Were you very politically active before any of this began? Yeah, you don't.
I
You,
wasn't.
you don't strike. You just noticed some corruption in your community. You tried to fix it, and it starts to balloon rather quickly for you. So
Yeah. So I kind of started at the county level, but each time I didn't make headway. I'm not the kind of person that will just give up. And so I went up the ranks, and, like, I met with the district attorney. I met with Franchardo in person. I met with the chief detective. His name is Corey Dickerson. I went up and up and up trying to get help. And I basically said, I'm not going to let this go. I'm going to expose this. But I didn't realize how far up it went.
So let's begin from let's start from the beginning, Hadassah. You're going on with your life. You get certified to be a foster parent, which I can't. I imagine it's not easy to get that certification from the state. What did you have to do to get that?
Yeah. So first of all, you have to go through like 3 to 6 months of rigorous training. You need to have all your clearances. You need to have your, criminal background checked, FBI fingerprints, child abuse record, like everything. They look into everything. And I was approved to foster. This was at the end of 2020. And then in February of 2021, or it might have been 2020, February of 2021 or 2020, I got my first placement. And then in October.
Well, let's pause there.
Yeah.
You go through all of this. Why do you want to be a foster parent?
Yeah, so actually, when I was getting my bachelor's degree, I graduated with my bachelor's in 2017. I'm a criminal justice major, and I really, really wanted to go to law school. That was my goal. I wanted to be a family attorney, and I was never good at standardized testing. It's just something like I cannot sit through. And so I took my LSAT like 4 different times. I had a really high GPA, but whenever I took the LSAT, it was like really, really low. And so I applied to a number of schools. I got accepted into Appalachian School in Grundy, Virginia. They offered me a $10,000 scholarship, but I would have had to move with my young children out of state. We had just bought a house. We were very grounded in Harrisburg. And so I chose not to do it. I didn't get in locally to the law school. I did attend a trial admissions program at Widener Law. But I didn't get into that. And I kind of was like, you know what? If this isn't meant to be, like, I'll try to do something else. At the time, I had worked with a counseling agency. I was working with special needs children. I also worked as a guest teacher in multiple like central Pennsylvania schools, including Susquehanna, Harrisburg, Central Dauphin. I don't know if you're familiar with Pennsylvania.
No, but I mean, this is all very important because I want people to understand, like, you're a good souled person, like you're out there trying to make your community a better place. Not, you're not focused on the outside politics. You're just out there helping out families that, helping out children in need. You try to go to family law, but then you redirect yourself, and you're still finding a way to help out kids in need. And
yeah. So, I mean, this whole thing has really been about just trying, to have the truth exposed, and that, justice is served. And it's been so unbelievably hard to expose the corruption for these high ranking officials. And yeah, you can see from my, employment history and my background, I've always been involved as a public servant, involved with children, involved with like helping, improve society and helping other people. And it's totally crazy that I got caught up in this.
so,
Yeah.
so you foster kids for 3 years.
Yeah, and I adopted my youngest child.
Adopted one.
Yeah, that was through their recommendation. It was through Dauphin County. I was a fit adoptive mother.
Judge saw no issue with you. Didn't think you were crazy.
Yeah, they saw nothing wrong. Everything was fine. And that was like a year before the incident happened. And basically in October of 2023, I find out from another family in the Jewish community that there's 4 missing children. Now, I had stopped fostering. I already had my adoptive son. I had my 3 biological children. I am a single mom, so 4 children is enough for me, 1 to 4. And so I had stopped, but I knew the people that worked at Children and Youth because I had fostered with them. So when I found out that these 4 children were missing, I tried to report it. They did not respond to the scene where the children were found. The Harrisburg City Police Department released the 4 children to me. They were found in horrible condition. They had no clothes on. They were soiled in feces. And when I got home with them, I noticed that they had a lot of bruises. And as a mandated reporter, I took them into the hospital to be seen. And they were diagnosed with suspected child abuse. And
where were they found, Hadassah?
What did you say?
Where were they found?
So they were found basically in the ghetto I don't know whose home it was, but there wasn't any proper supervision. Both of the parents were not with those children when they were found. Everyone who was at the scene appeared to be intoxicated, high. It was such a crazy scene. Like, it was bad. And that's why the police released the children to me, because they couldn't stay there. And so the Children and Youth Agency, I tried to get them to come out to the scene, but I don't know why they didn't come out, because I was like, look, this is an emergency situation. You should be here. I don't work for Children and Youth. I'm not fostering anymore. Yes, I happen to know the children from the Jewish community, but that's not my job,
They were from a Jewish family inside the church there, or the synagogue there?
Yeah. So the mother of the children that were abandoned, it's a long story, but her father, she went through her own form of abuse. Her father was a convicted felon in the Jewish community in 2001. He was the cantor of a synagogue. His name was Philip Whitlin. You can look him up, it's public record. And so that mother really, really struggled with her children, but I never thought that she would leave them like that.
Well, it does seem a little odd.
Well, and not just that, but she wasn't married to anyone in the Jewish community. Her and the father, they're both homeless, drugs, and all sorts of stuff. So the place where those children were found, from what I understand, was the father's side, but he was living in a tent. So yeah. Anyway, the 2 of them, Yeah.
Yeah, there was nothing of like significance. It wasn't like some high-ranking officials' kids or anything like that. Just some kids that were, left. Yeah, horrible.
Correct.
Horrible.
But
Okay.
the reason that this whole thing turned into public corruption is because it's not that they were upset that I reported the children. After 5 days of caring for those children, I contacted Josh Shapiro, I contacted the state office, and I contacted the commissioner's office to let them know that children and youth employees, sorry, my thing just fell, that the children and youth employees were not doing their job. And that's where things got fishy. So on October 16th, when I basically sent an email to the state and to Josh Shapiro, hey, look, these kids were found in this condition. I tried to take care of them for 5 days. They're still not helping, blah, blah, blah. 2 days later, they file a complaint against me and my children.
Who's they?
CYS employees.
So that's CPS essentially.
Yeah, the CPS employees that I implicated, they try to discredit me by saying, oh, those kids were never indicated with abuse. They try to make it look like the whole thing never happened, even though I have the discharge paper, the kids had bruises, all the evidence is there, but it's their word against mine.
You went to the doctor with them, and they had.
Correct. It's absolutely crazy. And so what ends up happening, they put those kids back with the mom that left them in that condition. Get ready for this. I go down to the police department because I found that she has a public record for domestic violence for serious bodily injury against the father. So I'm like, oh my God, not only did this mother leave them in this condition, but she also has criminal records. She has domestic violence from the past. This is like huge red flags. And so after I tell the police that, the CPS employees, they file something against that mother, but I don't know what happened after that. All I know is they come after me.
Yeah, this whole case triggers an investigation to you because you report to Shapiro, who is he governor at that point?
Yeah, this was in 2023.
Okay, so he's governor at that point. So you report to the governor, who else did you say? The attorney general?
No, I reported it to the Office of Children, Youth, and Families. They're the Department of Human Services over children and youth.
Okay, so you go to the bosses and report it, and you go to the governor. Well, you're just leaving yourself a paper trail.
Right, but instead of them helping me, they try to discredit me and target me as if it never happened. Like, we'll shush her, make it look like nothing happened, and we'll just continue on with whatever we're doing,
Now, do they try to take your kids from you?
Yes, and they did take my kids for 13 days. So basically what happens so I filed a complaint on October 16th. It's documented. They file a referral against me on October 18th. And they basically say that those kids were never indicated with abuse, even though it's on paper. And for a week and a half, my family is targeted. We have police sitting outside our house. We're like being targeted, threatened, intimidated, stalked. They're going into my kids' schools. Okay. And I call the local police. Nobody will help me. I call the state police. Nobody will help me. I eventually decide to go on October 24th to the FBI. And I'm basically like, look, this is public corruption. I need help. They're going to take my kids. And I'm told, no, don't worry. You're okay. They're not going to take your kids.
And you know,
yes, they are.
I assume you know some of these officers and so forth because you've been working with.
I was working with them in the schools. And I couldn't understand why they weren't helping me and they were siding with children and youth. And I'm telling them, look, this is what happened. Now, don't forget, those kids, they were found in Harrisburg City, but I was living in Susquehanna Township. So when I'm asking Susquehanna for help, I'm telling them those kids were abused, but that wasn't their case. It was in Harrisburg City. So they're just getting the false reports from CYS. They didn't see everything from Harrisburg. And long story short, what ends up happening? On October 26th, I basically knew that if I didn't get out of my house and leave the jurisdiction, I would never see my kids again. I pick up my kids, we go over the river to Cumberland County, and 5 days later, on November 3rd, they file a fabricated dependency petition to the Dauphin County Court. They get an ex parte warrant. They trick me.
Well, just slow down, Hadassah, just because
Yes.
a lot of people don't understand this language. We're used to it because we've been through it.
Yeah.
But when you're saying this report that they filed, explain exactly what that means. It's essentially you can give a get and correct me if I'm wrong at this point, but you can make a claim as a DHS worker or CPS
You
worker.
can actually make a claim. Anyone can make a claim. It doesn't have to be DHS. And I'll explain it to you later because I did it against the mother. Anyone can file an emergency protective petition to a court without any evidence.
Any evidence?
Without any evidence to substantiate your claims, and you can get a warrant to remove someone's children and they're not present to defend themselves.
The judge just has to read your report, and if he believes you, and now if they're wrong and it goes to court, there's no repercussions for filing that false report as well.
Correct. So no one gets in trouble for either accidentally taking your kids or intentionally taking your kids.
And you already had your kids taken from you for 13 days.
No, not yet.
Oh, that hadn't happened yet.
No. So
Well,
I went to the FBI and I said, look, they're going to take my kids. I knew they were going to take my kids because they were fabricating allegations against me. And the FBI is like, oh, no, you're okay. They're not going to take your kids. But when you know, right?
Yep.
So I took my kids over to the other jurisdiction. We literally had a mortgage of like $2,200, a beautiful house. But I knew if I didn't leave, I would never see my kids again.
Yep.
And so I picked up and I left with my kids. And of course, they went into the court. They get a fabricated warrant, not fabricated warrant. The warrant was real, but it was based on false information. There was no evidence. And they tell me, not CYS, the police department says, hey, we're going to investigate children and youth for corruption. And I believe them and I come back and they serve me with a warrant and they take my kids.
You're kidding me. That's
They
how they
tricked me.
got you.
What?
That's how they got you.
That's how they got me. So listen what happens. So they serve me with a warrant. It's a Friday afternoon. It's like 3:00 in the afternoon. There's like 1 hour until court closes. I have nowhere to go. No one to complain to. They get to take my kids. I can't do anything about it, right? And they tell me you can come on Monday to the shelter hearing. The shelter hearing is the first hearing to decide if your kid should be in care or if your kid should be held for a certain period. So I go to the shelter hearing on Monday, and the judge that is assigned to the case is the same judge that allowed me to adopt my youngest son. Isn't that funny? It's rather interesting. And by the way, the dependency petition that they filed against me, what is the one thing they didn't want to tell the court? That I was a foster mother and that I adopted. They make all these allegations against me, trying to make me look like, those kids were never abused, mental health, da da da. But the one thing that would have explained the whole corruption, they don't tell because they don't want anyone to know that. Now, the judge knew me because he did my adoption. And so I said to the judge, I said, listen, this is organized crime. What they are saying is completely fabricated to cover up what they messed up. And can you please transfer the case to the other county? Because I moved. And of course, they don't want him to transfer it because then they lose control of the case.
Nope.
But he sided with me and he transferred the case. So, the time extended a little bit. And the other county, they have a hearing, and I'm not allowed to enter any evidence. I'm not allowed to speak at the hearing. They completely blocked me from basically representing myself.
And I would just pause this because people listening to this who have not experienced the family court system may think, well, that's not true. That can't happen. That can't possibly be right. No, that is exactly how family court works. They can shut you out. They can make it as quiet and take your rights away just because they have the name family court associated with them. It's one of the most. It's straight up communism.
It's horrible. It's complete corruption. And the way they get away with it is that the case is sealed, so nobody ever knows about it.
No one ever gets to hear about what they did.
Correct. And
Yeah.
I'm still I sent a subpoena to try to get the transcripts almost a year ago, and I'm still waiting to get them because I'm suing them. And I'm trying to get the transcripts of the false testimony that was given by one of the caseworkers against me, and I can't even get the transcript. So it's very, very difficult. But anyways, what ended up happening was this other county took on the case. I was very lucky that the caseworker that was assigned to the case was honest, and she couldn't believe that they took my children. She said, there's no evidence. You fostered and adopted. You took care of those other children. Why did they take your children? And I said, because they're trying to cover it up. And what ended up happening was they dismissed the other county's petition. My kids were not adjudicated, and my kids were returned to me. So happy ending.
Well,
It's the beginning of a very long rabbit hole of corruption.
yeah. So you get the kids back. That's restored, but I'm sure that you're on a list now in your other county where you're paying. Are you still paying your mortgage at this point over there?
Oh, so after I moved, I was having a mortgage and paying for rent. So I was
Right.
paying like $2,200 and paying $1,200 in rent. I was suffocating financially. They completely screwed my life up. And if you can understand, we had everything going for us, and all we did was try to help those kids. And our life got destroyed for filing a complaint.
And this is something that's concerning too, because when we wrote an article on the corruption in CPS, and You're the Power is had a real big breakthrough in Georgia's Child Protective Services picking up. I think it's like they got 6 cases that they've won.
Mm-hmm.
And they had no clue this corruption existed until 2 years ago. And I know the founder of that organization, and he's coming on Wednesday, but he's just dumbfounded by how corrupt the system is. And in your case, not only is Pennsylvania a huge swing state, but it's also where an assassination attempt took place. And this is taking place in the hometown of the governor. Right. So it of all things to politicize and use for political warfare, CPS seems like the easiest first thing to do to get someone to shut the heck up or get out of Dodge and get out of exposing anything. And it sort of feels like that's what happened to you. You stumbled.
It was the timing. I think the timing was everything. This whole thing happened at a time when Josh Shapiro knew that he was going to try to run with Kamala Harris. They didn't want to have any dirt coming out from that area. I got swept up in this. I don't even know how you explain this because if it didn't happen with those kids, I was on good terms with the agency I adopted with. And it's unbelievable. I didn't know about any of this corruption, nothing, until that happened to my family. And because of the personality I have and being that type of person that, when something's not right, you really try to fight for justice. I've always been, a person who wants things to be right. And, you know, I'm very passionate. And that's kind of how I got involved in the whole ordeal. Um, so long story short, from like October of 2023 until I would say like April, I was gung ho about exposing the county employees. I went up to the chief detective. I went up to the district attorney. I was fighting them. I filed a private criminal complaint. I was like going through this, file with the court. They're trying to cover stuff up. They're trying to tamper with documents. I'm just trying to jump through all of these loopholes. And just FYI, these people engage in mail fraud. They withhold orders. They'll meter like an envelope in May, and then they won't send it to the post office until July. Like these people, they have so many tricks up their sleeve that I
Wow.
never knew about until I got like super involved. Um, and so that was, yeah.
Oh, you strike me a little bit like sheltered in your mind frame of how the system was, how you were told it was supposed to operate.
Oh,
I
yeah.
feel for you because I remember when we had our first trial with our kids. I felt so relieved because I thought, oh, the judicial system will protect us. We'll be able to explain this all out. And it absolutely blindsided me how it wasn't just CPS, it was the guardian ad litem, it was chief of police, it was all of these people, the CASA workers, and they were all operating on with a different goal. And
Yeah. Well, and so I got lucky because the caseworker from the other county was an honest individual. If I would have had, someone that was racketeering with the first county, I mean, I never would have got my kids back. And they tried to influence the second county. And the second county, they told me, they said, we had a meeting with them and we decided we were going to have our own meeting. And, that was God. That was honestly God. God protected my family. Um, and,
well,
I guess,
they
yeah.
used the police chief to come and entrap you to take your kids and
Well,
played into the corruption, which to me, that's the most corrupt thing you could do to somebody. It's like, oh, hey, let's get her in. We'll tell her we'll go after corruption and have a good old laugh about it as you take someone's kids.
Well, the crazy thing too was I was calling the police, begging them for help to protect us against CYS. And until today, they still won't release the police records because if they release the police records, they're implicated too. They both
Yeah.
screwed up.
Yep.
So, anyways, long story short, so this is how I kind of got super involved with all these different officials and I started to realize like how massive this like organized crime was. And I mean, I already had some legal background behind me. Um, but I never knew about the corruption and I never knew that. So I kind of had to like learn on this fast track, right? Like if you don't learn quick, you will not survive this, right? I mean, if I didn't leave my home on October 26th, I truly believe I would not have my kids. And it was very evident that when I went to the FBI on October 24th and I told them my kids were going to be taken and they didn't believe me, I was right. Sometimes what's going to happen and based on actions that are taken by other people. You don't have to be a wizard to know what's going to happen. Like some things are pretty obvious.
Yeah, right. And you were lucky to have a judge that had known you and was willing to move your case. Because I remember when we went through our ordeal that we moved 2 counties over, and they would not move our case whatsoever. But and here's the thing: you're the reason why they're going after you is because you're exposing what they do.
I know.
And they're now doing it to you. And did you think at all that they would weaponize against you and try to take your family and rip it apart just over?
Never. If I thought in my wildest dreams that a complaint against county employees would sacrifice my family, I never would have filed it. I never would have helped those children. Ever. My life would still be the same in Pennsylvania. I would still be living in the same house. I would still be living by my family that lives up there, and everything would be the same. But I'm the person that I am. I stepped up for those kids because I care about people. And that's what got me entangled. I mean, even speaking up for those children not getting help is what got me entangled.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. A lot of people, they always focus on federal politics, right? It's, Trump this or Biden that, and people would be shocked. I think, like you are, that when you focus on your local community, you're going to see a lot more corruption than you'll ever be able to affect change on a federal level. Because how did your parents react to this? Because this is their grandkids.
Oh my God. So first of all, leading up to the actual taking of my kids, nobody understood what was going on. My mom was like, they're never going to take your kids. And I'm like, yes, they are. And I'm trying to explain it to people as quick as it's going. And nobody's understanding because people don't get this whole picture of what's happening. Like, people don't understand the deep state corruption. And I truly, feel for President Trump because what my family went through, we went through similar to what he went through, but we went through it on a county level.
Yep.
He went through it on a federal level. But it's the
Well,
same idea.
Tactics are all the similar, is to disrupt your life, to drain your money, and to scar your family as much as they can until they either have succeeded or until you're out of there. Now when they took your kids, like how once it happened, what was your parents' reaction to that?
Oh my God, my family was in shock. Everybody was trying to advocate for me. I had teachers, principals. I mean, I was working as a mandated reporter, so I have a slew of people that were writing letters on my behalf, sending it to the court. Like, how could they take my kids when I'm the one helping other people's kids? It was unreal, just like completely unreal, but it was out of our control. And, all I could do was keep fighting through the legal system and, going to the things that they told me, like, come to the shelter hearing. Okay, I'm coming. I'm going to tell them what happened. Okay, I'll keep telling the caseworker. I'll keep showing her the evidence. Here's what happened. Here's what happened. And, it worked out for me, but it doesn't work out for most people. And I think that if I didn't move as quick as I moved, I would not have my kids. So you really have to trust your gut.
Did they put them in the care with their grandparents then, or did they?
No, they split my kids up in between strangers. That's how much they wanted to punish me. It's disgusting. It was retaliation. I have family, I have friends, I have mandated reporters. Why weren't my kids put with them? Right?
They wanted it to suffer on all levels.
Yeah.
How the
We're
kids
not going to do what she wants. We're not going to do what's best for her kids. They weren't there for the welfare of my kids. No.
No. Well, and if they're willing to do that over a simple complaint, what are they willing to do to other people that it makes We covered in an article I wrote, it's over 3 million kids are relocated a year. So however many families is probably close to 1.5 million families are affected by CPS, and out of those, only 18% are verified. Are what not verified, but you understand what I'm saying. It should be removed. So you're talking a huge percentage of parents that are just having their kids taken for, I don't care if it's for a day. To have your kids taken by the state is a horrible thing to experience.
It is so traumatic. It's permanent trauma. And like I still have night sweats at night. I have nightmares. Um it's just so traumatic to know that you could be doing nothing wrong and your kids can be legally kidnapped from you based on someone else's statements that are unverified. It's just unreal.
Yeah, it's there's well, and as sad as it is, stories like yours, stories all over the country, thanks to the internet, are now coming to light. And I think we're going to see a revolution in this family court setting because from how it was established to really protect kids, and now because there's no check and balance to it, it's being abused to persecute political enemies, or not even political. Just in your case, you're just trying to expose what you thought were one or two bad employees.
Right. But I was going after the top. So the people that I was involved with was the director of that agency, and she was there for 14 years. She covered up a murder of another child in 2015. I didn't expose this in October of 2023. I exposed it a little bit later on. But I really targeted it at its core, and that's the backlash I got. Now, I'd like the audience to know that that director is gone.
Good.
And I truly believe it's because I turned their life upside down and exposed them.
Yes.
She's
Good.
no longer there, but there are still a couple other employees that are there that were part of that fraud. They are under federal investigation. I don't have a lot of updates about it, but I did receive confirmation via email from an FBI agent that they're under investigation.
And that's what happens, and kudos to you, Hadassah, for not giving up. And that's essentially what it takes. Is they think they can shake you enough that you'll just be grateful to get out of there with your kids. And they most certainly don't expect you to put up a fight, much less expose connections to an assassination attempt. And I want to go into that now a little bit, right? Like,
yeah, wait, so hold on. So after that happened, I didn't get straight to the attempted assassination. In between October to July, I was exposing Ellen Greenberg's story.
Okay, we talked about that on our show, but tell a little bit about that, because you are a lot closer to that story. We played just a couple of clips and the 911 call that was made, and we all agreed that there is something so stinky about it. No one agreed that you can stab yourself 20 times, sever your spinal cord, and keep stabbing yourself in the back.
Listen, there's no evidence that she stabbed herself 20 times. The only evidence that she stabbed herself 20 times is a false report from her fiance, Samuel Goldberg. There were no witnesses to that. And he was the last witness to be with Ellen Greenberg.
And let's talk about this guy. Who is this guy, her boyfriend?
Her fiance, he's a sports writer for NBC. His uncle is a Pennsylvania Supreme Court disciplinary board judge who tampered with the murder scene. The two of them are defendants on my RICO case, along with Josh Shapiro. And I filed a criminal complaint on July 9th of 2024 implicating Samuel Goldberg and James Schwartzman and Marlon Osborne, who was the medical examiner, for first-degree murder and, basically obstruction of justice in the murder investigation. And the district attorney's office is concealing that criminal complaint.
All right, so tell me about why you started focusing on Ellen's case to begin with.
Yeah. So after my whole charade with the corruption in Dauphin County, I created a platform on Facebook called Speak Up, and I started receiving tons of messages from other victims, other whistleblowers, and I started connecting with people. And when you connect with other people, you learn a lot more. And at some point, I can't remember exactly what the date was, another whistleblower was like, "Oh yeah, did you see the comment on Josh Shapiro's I guess it was like his Facebook comments? Someone said, 'Oh, you covered up the murder of Ellen Greenberg,' and I didn't know about it. I had no idea." And I started to investigate it, and I got extremely connected to the story because she is from my Jewish community. I never knew about it because nobody was talking about it. It was like it was like non-existent.
Yeah. So you didn't hear about it when the murder happened.
No, so first of all, in 2011, I lived in Israel for 6 years. So I lived in Harrisburg for 25 years, but in that period, I moved to Israel for 6 years. And I came back at the end of 2010. I think at the time I had 2011. She was murdered January 26th of 2011. I had just come back from Israel. I had just started at the community college. I started my associate's degree, and then I transferred to I went from Hack to Central Penn to get my bachelor's. But anyways, I was really busy. I was caught up. I think at the time I wasn't going to synagogue. I don't know what I was doing at the time, but I had no clue. I had no idea about it. Nobody talked about it. It was like,
That's a big deal for your little area too, right?
it is. And I think it was just so horrific and so dirty that people were afraid. And when the thing happened to me too, even though I had some people writing letters on my behalf, there were other people that didn't want to get involved, because the moment you get involved, you become a target.
Yep.
Oops, sorry, my phone just dropped.
It was good for emphasis.
No, it's almost better not to know what's going on so that you're not part of it.
It shocked me. I thought for sure when I told people about what was going on, everyone would be on board. And I can't tell you how many family members I've had that have just told me, let sleeping dogs lie. Don't do it. Just, don't focus on it. You're not going to fix it. I straight up told me you're not going to.
Yeah, you can't fight CPS. You can't. It's like a massive hill. You just can't fight against the government. I've had people tell me that.
Yeah, and it's surprised me because I just didn't expect that reaction from people, But there are ostriches in the group as well, right? So that's you have to fight through that stuff too as well, because there'll be times where you feel very alone, especially in situations like this. So with Ellen's case, you discover this a few years later, almost 10 years later, or a little longer, I guess.
Yeah, I came across so first of all, I found out about it from that other whistleblower that I connected with because of the corruption in Dauphin County. So she by the way, she was very focused on Josh Shapiro because he was involved in another cover up in her story for like 8 years. And so as attorney general and stuff. And so when you connect with these people and you find out that all of these corruption crimes have this same pattern and strategy of covering stuff up, your investigation gets a lot easier and stronger because you have ways to basically oh, this is happening here and here and here and here and here. And it's just, it's like sharing intel between victims and between whistleblowers. So anyways, I get involved. I look into a lot of the information shared by Gavin Fish. He was very big on, Ellen Greenberg's murder and covering it. I read the autopsy. I've read so much stuff about her. And so I start reaching out. Don't ask. I reach out to Seth Williams. He was the district attorney at the time of her murder. I get myself super involved in this. I reach out to him. I try to get him to basically implicate somebody else. He gets very upset and he blocks me. This was on, I think it was on Twitter or on X. I have a conversation with him. I don't even know why he responded to me, but that's how I start my investigation.
He's the attorney general?
Seth Williams was the district attorney at the time that she was murdered.
Okay. What is he in political office now or no?
No. So he was convicted of bribery and went to prison for 5 years and just got released not too long ago. And so my first thing was like, oh, he was convicted for bribery. How come they didn't do that for her case when they covered it up as a suicide? So he was the first person I looked at. But then as I continue to investigate and talk to different players in her case, I reached out to her parents. By the way, I got their information from someone else in my Jewish community. And I find out that they tried to approach Josh Shapiro. I guess it was August or September of 2023. They tried to approach him at the synagogue on Yom Kippur, and the state police stops them from being able to talk to him. Oh, the state police, the great state police, right? Anyways, for the audience, just so the audience knows, in Pennsylvania, law enforcement works to protect the corruption for the officials in Pennsylvania.
It's just that embedded.
It's very unfortunate, and I do support law enforcement, but not in Pennsylvania.
You're trying to, it's
really bad.
Yeah. So, and that's Greenberg's parents they tried to stop, who have been trying to. We played a clip. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. We played a clip of Shapiro reiterating what the coroner had found, and
he's such a liar. He lies through his teeth.
That's what we all felt like. It was just he was caught in a lie, and he's not going to put his neck out. Especially, that's interesting too. That so her fiance's her future father-in-law, is a Supreme Court justice for the state of discipline.
Supreme Court judge for the disciplinary board, which is funny that he's on a disciplinary board for misconduct. Bless you.
Thank you.
Conduct and ethics issues when he's tampered with a murder scene.
Yeah, well, and that's what's crazy. That murder scene was all cleaned up. You listen to the phone call, and he's like, "Oh, she's got a," I don't know what happened to her, and 3 minutes later, "Oh, I guess she's got a knife in her stomach." Oh, and it's I don't know if you ever listened to the 911
dispatch. I did, and I've watched the videos, and I filed a criminal complaint. Yeah.
There's no way. There's just no way. No way.
It is so disgusting. And when I filed my criminal complaint, I sent it to the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office, and I got a response from District Attorney James Della Fiora. He works under Larry Krasner, and he ended up sending it to Chester County to Andrea Cardamon. Well, Andrea Cardamon has never responded to my emails. She has never responded to any of my voicemails. She knows that she has the criminal complaint, doesn't tell the public about it. Nothing. It is so obvious that it is a cover-up, but this is why. Because they can.
Yes.
I'm still alive, and I'm telling you what happened in Dauphin County, and I have evidence to show that happened, and they're still covering it up. So how can a dead person get any justice if someone that's not dead can't get justice?
Well, and I choose to believe that we still live in America, and although our justice system is flawed, as long as we keep trying, we have a real solid chance at exposing it. But it's it's not an easy thing to do by any means.
Yeah, well, that's what my RICO case is about. And they tried. So I filed the RICO case at the federal court. They tried to throw it out in any way possible. And after multiple, investigations and seeing what was going on with the courts, I came to the realization that the most honest court in Pennsylvania is the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court. And so that's where I filed the RICO case, and that's where it's active. Now, the RICO case goes over the attempted assassination, it goes over Ellen Greenberg, it goes over my story. I filed it with a co-plaintiff, her brother's being held in a guardianship. She also fled Pennsylvania. And so what we're trying to do is show the court, look, there is massive public corruption in Pennsylvania. It's the same defendants over and over again that are abusing the system. And we need to dissolve this racket.
Yeah.
And they're trying really hard to throw us out. We don't have attorneys. Everything is pro se. We're self-represented. But I'm persistent and I am tenacious. And I think that I'm definitely getting it out. And, I don't think Ellen Greenberg's parents will ever get the justice that they deserve. I honestly think this is their only chance, my RICO lawsuit, because, even the attorneys that they hired, they're part of the overwhelming
Part of it.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's a mess. It's a big mess.
Well, and it makes me, because Ken Silva, he tweeted out about you, the lady, and I was curious to get your take on this. Ken Silva, he says, the lady who alleged with zero evidence that Josh Shapiro was involved in the Trump shooting was recently threatened with sanctions for her numerous emails to the court clerk in Western PA. She was also locked out of her Pacer account because she wasn't paying her fees. Laughing emoji. First of all, you were very honest with us. You're not claiming to have any sort of evidence besides the fact that there was a very odd amount of meeting with Josh Shapiro, Biden, the Kamala Harris campaign that all took place before this assassination attempt, and knowing how corrupt Pennsylvania is.
Right. I already know how many crimes he's involved in.
Yes.
I know firsthand the crimes that he's involved in. I believe that I have a very strong circumstantial case, and that with my tips, they can continue, the authorities that are supposed to be the ones investigating, not me, can continue with what I give them. They can make an even stronger case. And Ken Silva, I don't know, him at all. I don't know.
Oh, we're experiencing just a little bit of problems here, Hadassah. We'll wait for her to call back. We'll give it a minute here, everyone. Hadassah experiencing some issues here. Just wait for a minute. Is going to malign you because he doesn't agree with your analysis. You know what I mean? It's you have receipts to back up.
What? Yeah, and I'm like, listen, if you're gonna debunk something, you need to have counter evidence to disprove it. Otherwise, your claim to debunk is literally the same thing that you're saying against me saying that I have no receipts.
Well, and let's get into this now with old Shapiro.
Mm-hmm.
You and you email. I don't think you emailed. You texted me a list of the day-to-day operations of Josh right before leading to this assassination, and there's a lot of interesting stuff tied in with that. But what I'm curious about is you release this along with your like, how does this get out? I guess let's start with this, right? You notice all the implications of Shapiro's involvement or at least complacency in allowing an assassination attempt on a political rival.
So hold on. First of all, the week leading up to the attempted assassination, I was at my limit with Josh Shapiro. I was literally hounding the White House. I was calling the tip line and I'm like, this guy cannot be a VP running mate. This is what he's doing. We need help in Pennsylvania. And I'm just going at it. And I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I just know what I'm doing.
And politically at that time, it's probably the last thing the Biden White House wants to hear.
Oh, yeah.
When we talk about Biden, too, I mean, let's be honest, Biden wasn't running anything. Whoever was in charge of the White House definitely didn't want the information to come out with what was going on in Pennsylvania because it was a swing state. They needed to win at least 3 of these swing states. And God forbid if corruption comes out and everyone goes right because of it and votes, which is what happened anyway, because the corruption's so bad. People voted that way anyway. But you're out there a week before this is, and to give the idea too, Shapiro is the front runner among the media darlings for VP pick. He's not only that, but later on he's meeting with Vladimir Zelensky, signing bombs to be sent over to Ukraine. Very White House-esque type of behavior from Shapiro. I think personally they were going to pick him for Secretary of State. That was the idea, because he was going to handle foreign relations. That's why you would have Zelensky there in Pennsylvania, campaigning for you in your party.
See, but if you were in Pennsylvania, so here's what was going on. I know I wasn't in Pennsylvania, but I was very involved with Pennsylvania. I was talking to whistleblowers in Pennsylvania daily, and I kept being fed all this information and reports. Shapiro might be picked for Kamala Harris VP, and they were pushing him up and pushing him up. And so in my mind, I'm thinking like, this can't happen. This guy is corrupt. I need to expose it. And so I'm gung-ho doing everything in my ability to expose Josh Shapiro, not realizing that there's something else, the whole political thing going on, because I wasn't involved in the whole political scheme.
Right.
And for me, it was just expose the corruption, get the bad guys into jail. Like, I don't care about anything else. That's all I want to get out. But, you know, obviously, since then, we've learned about the laundering of funds with Ukraine and this whole thing. So, anyways, what I do notice and what is documented is that over those days, so I release a couple of videos on TikTok, and one of my videos, hold on one second, I'm trying to remember. Okay, the one that I talk about the attempted assassination is after. So hold on. That's the one that had almost 1 million views. By the way, they've since banned all of my accounts. And so what I start noticing in those, you know, days leading up is that my phone is having issues. And obviously it's very hard to prove that they were tapping my phone unless I have access to how they were doing that. But I had never had my phone tapped before. And on July 12th, the day before the attempted assassination, I messaged another whistleblower on WhatsApp because I believe my phone is being tapped and I'm not trusting my regular calls, which is why I downloaded WhatsApp. And I basically tell her that I'm having clicking on my phone. And someone else had mentioned to me, "Do you think your phone is being tapped?" Because it was a weird noise that we heard. Um, and that's documented. So you can't say, like, "Oh, I'm just saying that now." No, this was
These text
actually
messages.
documented the day before the attempted assassination. And so, I have these calls to the White House. They obviously know I'm going after Shapiro. It's not that far fetched to say that people in this position that are high ranking, if you're targeting someone that they're trying to put up and I'm going after him, that they would tap my phone to see what I'm doing. Like, it's really not that hard. It's
If
not
they were
that far fetched.
if they were willing to do it to a presidential candidate in 2016, they're gonna do it to you. You're nobody.
Well, and
Um,
not just that, but my letter to Biden basically said that if he didn't help expose the corruption and help Pennsylvanians, that I was going to work with the other, like his competition with Trump. And so I sent a letter to Biden and I sent a letter to Trump. And, obviously the attempted assassination didn't happen because of my letter. But my letter came at a time that I believe they were planning this and it was causing a problem for them and they were trying to keep tabs on me, like, is she talking to Trump? What's going on? Is she giving him this information? Anyways, long story short.
Too, you were in Israel for 6 years too. I'm sure that raises some red flags too. They want there's a whole thing. There's a whole list of stuff that they could have been concerned about. And it's all and
Right,
good.
I'm a dual citizen. I speak
Yep.
Hebrew. Obviously Trump is very pro-Israel. They don't know who I am. Shapiro knows who I am because I'm from his Jewish community. But the Biden administration I'm calling in, he's probably like, what the hell is going on? you know,
And you're here's
Hadassah is the Jewish name.
and you're talking about we're not just talking about presidents getting elected. You're talking about a whole change of power and a power structure being established and a vetting process that goes on during this whole primary session, and pieces are figured out, and there's a lot of fighting for these positions as well. And it did appear that Shapiro was very much tapped for something within the Kamala Harris administration that would have had significant influence in world affairs. And here you are, this pesky
Here
little
I am trying to like disturb his agenda. And so the moment that happens, I'll never forget. I took my kids, we went down. It was to the Keys, the Florida Keys. We went for the weekend. And I remember, I don't, I think someone texted me the article that he was shot. And I'm telling you, I felt it in my gut. I was like, oh my God, it must have been Shapiro. Like, my first thought was him because I know what this guy is about. I know how he controls the state police. I've seen how he controls the state police. I've seen him use them, weaponize them. You know, I've seen him weaponize not just the state police, but also the Department of Human Services, and how he strategically has different individuals in these positions to cover up these corruption complaints. And he's my first thought. Now, at the moment, I wasn't thinking Biden. I wasn't thinking Soros. I wasn't thinking all these other things. So I sent an email to Kenneth Keller. He's an FBI agent. I sent it on July 13th. And I said, it's 99.999% Shapiro's involved. And this Kenneth Keller has thousands of emails from me from 2023 through today's date. I still copy him on everything. And he understands the pattern of what's going on in Pennsylvania. Based on his, like, what he wrote me in March of 2024, he didn't know that was happening in PA, I guess, until I started reporting all this stuff to him. But he's out of the jurisdiction. He's at the Washington field office. Anyways, long story short, this is what I sent him. And then I can't get it out of my head. And I'm like, I wonder if they know what Shapiro is doing. And so, like, all I could think of is, does the Secret Service know that Shapiro commits crimes? Does the Secret Service know how he weaponizes the state police? Do they know what's going on? And so I think around the 13th, so like the 13th, I send the email. The 14th, oh, and I'm convinced at that point that my phone is tapped because remember, I just sent the letter. Anyways, I end up calling. I think I like called the Miami Secret Service at first. And I was like, I really think that this person is involved. And it's just, I think he's involved. I don't know yet, but this is what I think. I sent the letter. This is what happened. I think he's involved. You guys should investigate.
Well, I mean, this is not an outrageous claim, right? With the amount of corruption that's going on.
Yeah, and I already was like involved in reporting this guy for corruption, and he's obviously an opponent of his. It's not far-fetched. Like people who are like, oh, the governor wouldn't do that. He wouldn't? Do you know what he does? Like,
well,
that's the murder of Ellen Greenberg. Like, do you know who this guy is?
You know, and what were they going to give him for? Because he had already had the institutions were already corrupted. He had the whole system in place so that when the murder happened, it could go through the system. They could blame the kid. They could wipe their hands clean of it, and then they could focus on him becoming a part of the administration somehow. And so you're not saying like it was Shapiro's plan to kill the president, but obviously someone met with Shapiro and someone said, listen, this is going down in your state. Or maybe he volunteered his own state.
Because of how corrupt PA is and because of what they're able to cover up. If you could see what I saw over the last year and a half trying to fight this corruption and how they are able to facilitate all of these cover-ups, you would understand that this is a simple task. And so when people say, oh, it's far-fetched, I'm like, okay, I'll give people the benefit of the doubt because they don't know what I've seen that's going on. But I know firsthand because I've been fighting it. I witnessed it, not the attempted assassination, but everything prior to. And I know how the system works. And so that was my first thought.
How far were you from the Butler?
I'm in Florida.
No, I mean like where you were raised in from the in the capital there. How far is Butler?
I don't know. I would say it's probably like 2 hours.
Couple hours, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No, and that's the thing I want to emphasize to people is your claim here is nothing other than here is a sequence of events that happened leading all the way up to the assassination and after. And this is not you hopping on some gravy train. You've been following this guy because he's allowed a personal affront on your family.
Correct.
After your kids, your poor, right? This guy is persona non grata in your household, and it just so happened that you caught him once again and involved in major corruption now, right? He's hit the big leagues, evidently, if he's allowing assassination attempts. And if what you're saying about the state police is true, which I believe it
is. Well, and so Chris Paris, let me tell you, when they took my kids, I went to the state police in Carlisle. Remember how I haven't given you all the details because it's a very complex story. But when I moved over and that day that they took my kids and I went back to Cumberland County, right? Dauphin County took my kids, but I was staying in Cumberland County. I went back and I got my kids' suitcase together of clothes. I got their medications together. And I went to the state police and I said, please transfer my stuff or my kids' stuff to them. They need their stuff. They wouldn't. They told me to leave. This is the state police that I went to for help because my kids were taken, what do you want to call it? Legal kidnapping. Yep. They wouldn't even give them the basic needs that I was providing for my children. Okay.
Well, and we get phone calls all the time from people saying state police. are doing this. There are a lot, there's this one case in Indiana where they covered up a murder of this woman who was in a hotel. Just very, very, a consistent theme everywhere. So, our listeners are not surprised by the fact that the state police was, and really it makes sense because wasn't that who was transporting Trump's envoy? And I think they were the secondary people there was state police.
So hold on. So I'm going to tell you how. So I filed my first criminal complaint. It was very broad. I didn't have enough information. I, I believe that it was Shapiro. He has to be involved. He's laundering money. And I'm telling you, over that time period, I I found out about mortgage fraud, healthcare fraud, so many different crimes that Shapiro is involved in. And I knew he had to be part of it. He runs the state police. They're under his leadership. He knows everything that's going on in this hierarchy because he's at the top. So any bad stuff that's happening under him, ultimately he really is responsible for because he oversees all these people, right? Anyways, we know for a fact that this guy didn't want Trump to be in office. We know that, he's sued him. He's done so many things. But what happens? I filed my first criminal complaint. I had done some investigation about I think I put this is what I wrote in my first criminal complaint. The thing with the BlackRock with the commercial, okay?
Yep.
I talked about Soros being connected. My main thing was Shapiro being over the state police. And I sent it to Butler. I sent it to the district attorney, but it was very, very broad. And I didn't have enough information. It was only like, what was it, 10 days after it happened. It was kind of like, here's a lead, but I don't have enough stuff. So,
Right.
of course, the district attorney, he sends me a letter and basically says there's other agencies investigating. And I didn't even try to fight it because I didn't have any more information. So I was like, you know, but then as things progress and we find out more information, I found out that Alex Soros had threatened President Trump through a tweet. I found out that Alex Soros had met with Shapiro in March. I found out that that Alex Soros was meeting with Zelensky's wife. It's actually on his Twitter. I was able to get data. The two of them are close. I found out that Shapiro met with Biden on July 3rd, then again on July 6th. On July 3rd, by the way, he met also with Tim Walz, and there was two other people. I forgot who they were.
And when was the assassination attempt? What day
on
was
the 13th?
The 13th, right?
And then I also found out that on the 5th, I think it was the 4th or the 5th, Thomas Matthew Crooks purchased the ammunition. So, like, okay, remember when they were trying to charge President Trump with all these crimes?
Yep.
And they weren't able to, like, they charged him with these crimes, but it didn't stop him from being able to campaign. So
Right.
then they switched to their last resort, and that was to eliminate their existential threat. And if you look at the public article that was posted, I think it was July 3rd or July 6th, it literally says that in the report. So they were meeting specifically to figure out how they were going to oppose President Trump. Now, do I have physical evidence that they said, okay, on this date, or now we're going to figure out how we're going to assassinate him? No, but the facts speak for themselves. They did try to assassinate him on July 13th. The state police did a walkthrough on July 11th of the event. I believe
Yes.
that they already knew that Thomas Matthew Crooks was going to carry it out. They saw where he was going to do it. And the day that they did do the attempted assassination, um, the shooter was on the building in the perimeter of the state police. He wasn't in the perimeter of the Secret Service. My opinion and like my criminal complaint is based on my timeline, my belief, right? Not anyone else's, my belief. And I signed what I believe to be true is that they tried to blame the Secret Service for a security failure to shift blame about what they really did. And it's the same pattern and strategy that they do with everything else. Just like when I reported the thing with the Smith children, instead of looking at that scandal, they tried to make it look like I was crazy. Instead of Ellen Greenberg looking into her murder, they tried to make it look like a suicide. They try to distort the facts so that people don't find out about their crimes and that nobody else will look into it. And what I also found out about the state police was that Chris Paris testified to the Senate Judiciary Committee, and he told the Senate Judiciary Committee that I guess his two troopers had left that building. And then I saw another article that said that they never left. There was conflicting evidence. So
Yeah.
as soon as you start to see all of these inconsistencies and you put the pieces together, but you also use that information that you already know about previous crimes and how he operates and the patterns and practices, it's not far fetched. And I believe that this was their motive. And when you find out from Doge that they were laundering funds to Ukraine and they wanted this to continue, they didn't want Trump to, become president. I mean, it's no one else had that motive. No one else had that capability. It's a process of elimination.
Well, and it's scary how close they got to complete. I mean, they almost got away with it.
I
You know,
know. I
still,
know.
they still probably have gotten away. Most of them have gotten away with it, but there will be some heads that roll because obviously, if someone tries to kill you, you're going to, and you get immense power, you're going to use that power to find out who did this.
Yeah, but if they never tell President Trump what Shapiro is doing in Pennsylvania and what crimes he's committing and how he's getting away with this, he will never know. He will
Why?
never know. He'll never have an avenue to look down that road. So he needs to know.
Why do you think, like, you put this workout on X and then you met some pretty stiff resistance right away. And the biggest one I would say is Dan Bongino, who's now the assistant director of the FBI. He didn't.
Yeah, I think that Dan Bongino knows about it. Um, okay, when I filed my second criminal complaint and I had more evidence. Oh, and by the way, from the day that happened until now, all of my TikTok accounts have been censored and banned. All of the information. Let me tell you, I would post videos. Okay, I would post videos. It was all talking about Shapiro and the corruption. I would literally have like 800 likes. And then if I would go back to the video, either the video would be taken down or they would reduce the likes. Someone is messing with the stuff. And the more they do it, the more clear it is to me that we are right on point. And so, do you remember when you were advertising to have me on your podcast?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
your account was banned, or what was it?
It is banned. It's
It
still
is banned.
for,
You're not the first person to tell me that. And when my account went viral on February 14th, I was about to enter a space with Scott Pressler. There was 85,000 people in it. And I raised my hand to speak in the space. And I was listening to the what is it, like the streaming for like 5 minutes. And all of a sudden, it's the oddest thing. All of a sudden, I couldn't hear anything. I got kicked out of my account and my account was banned for 7 hours.
Yeah.
And I received an email from X that said that somebody logged into my account from Omaha, Nebraska. When I told my neighbor about this, they said, there's a big CIA base there. I don't know what is going on. I don't know who is doing it, but I know for a fact that my accounts are being censored and that anybody who tries to host me on their videos or share my content is also receiving the same scrutiny.
And
They're working overtime to cover it up, and that's what tells me we're right on point.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we advertised your show. We've had a lot of internet issues here at the Free Speech Studio, And then on top of that, we've got we published that article on CPS, and it was immediately after that. And I feel CPS it ties into a lot of this, right? Because most people in the community can get behind abuse by child protective services. You start talking about assassinations attempts and everything, and it gets to be too much. But you start talking about this local area, but the problem is, and I think you experience this. You start digging into this, and it goes all the way up. There's no one to intervene midway. The corruption rides all the way through the top, and as you discover this, how would you describe your feeling was when you discovered that there's no one I can talk to with authority in the state of Pennsylvania? What was your moment of realization, and then your pivot point?
Well, I went to everything you can think of. I've contacted the Government Accountability Office. I've contacted Office of Inspector General, Attorney General, all the district attorneys. I think I've messaged every district attorney in Pennsylvania. Like when I'm dead set on, exposing something, I will like I mean, you see, I already got like 5 million views on the attempted assassination. But when I know that something is right, I become very, very focused on making sure that, we get to the end of it and figure out what's going on. Um, and I think like when I realized in Pennsylvania that I couldn't go to anyone, that's when I reached out to President Biden and President Trump because I realized there was no other option. But I didn't realize at the time that Biden was from Scranton and that he's part of the network. So
Well, and the head of
I was
state police,
meddling. Yeah,
Colonel Christopher Paris,
is close to him.
he went to the University of Scranton.
I know. I found that out like as time progressed, but I didn't know all of that. And so I was basically complaining about their friend, and
Yeah.
all my complaints that went to like the US attorney at the Middle District, Gerard Karam, he's friends with Biden. These people are criminals. They have a massive criminal racket, and I've been fighting the mafia. I'm like, there's
Yes.
no other way to describe it.
When you say you have to file these RICO claims, that's exactly what this is. This is, look at this guy. How was he ever effective?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just it. It just is all corruption, and you got to do your part to. And that's why we're grateful you came on Phantom Facts and shared this story with our audience too, because I think we're slowly building up a case for people to see that even if you do come across corruption, the amount of abuse and attacks, not just you, but your family will go under, your relatives, your job. It seeps into every aspect of your life when you try to expose someone's corruption. And then when, like you mentioned, you report it to all these different departments, and no one wants to go through that themselves. And that's, I think, the most infuriating part is, here are these public servants who have an actual ability to bring light to something. Where are the journalists? Where's your local ABC?
So ABC, I was in touch with one of the journalists, but as soon as it gets to public corruption, nobody will cover it because they will be targeted. There was she was like an investigator with the Bureau of Enforcement and Investigation. She tried to talk to one of the witnesses at Penn State that had seen the children. And the more she probed, the more she got threatened, and then she resigned from the department. So
They pushed out the honest people.
correct. They push out the honest people. And just so you know, there was a gentleman that worked at the medical examiner's office in Philadelphia. His name was Dave Quain. And he basically said that the medical examiner was manipulating the autopsy reports and he's no longer working there. So, that just goes to show you it's very, very hard to go up against the grain. Um, I see comments sometimes on X where people are like, oh, if she was a federal whistleblower, she would be dead already. Listen, if I was still in Pennsylvania, I probably would be, but
Yeah.
I got out really, really fast. Um, and when I came down to Florida, I also notified my sheriff's department. I notified Ron DeSantis's office. They know that my family is here. They know that we fled public corruption. And so, God forbid, if anything would happen, everybody would know who did it. But I think that's the only reason I've been able to get this far.
Well, and these people, they wouldn't think twice to make your kids orphans. I mean,
Oh,
the
yeah.
type of corruption they're involved in and the
Horrible.
trafficking of children. Uh, yeah, no, they have no qualms about that. That was the best thing you could have done is to get it public immediately, have public record. You kept track of everything, your conversations, and now there's, I mean, even if they tried to do something, it would just amplify it to the 1,000th degree.
Oh,
And
everybody would know it was them. You know what's interesting? Once I got to Florida, and I started, it's funny because they're all scared of me up there, but like when I started to do these investigations and I realized that I wouldn't be able to get records, each time I would call into the court, I started recording. And there's an exception. First of all, in Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania is a two consent state, but there's an exception that if you're a victim of a crime and you believe that a crime is going to be committed, you're allowed to record. And obstruction of justice is a federal crime. And considering that this is public corruption, that is one of the exceptions that I've gone off of. But I mean, I've recorded the police department, I've recorded the courts. Every time I call in, they're like, "Oh my god, it's her calling." And I've put stuff up on YouTube. They're kind of scared of me, but at the same time, like we just ask that they do the right thing. And what
yeah,
they're doing right now is not the right thing. They're trying so hard. They're working overtime to cover up these crimes. But it is gonna backfire on them. I just got an order back on Friday. Uh, two cases that I had filed. By the way, all of the cases that I have open are all related. So Ken Silva, for example, that reporter that I believe is, committing libel and slander, he doesn't know anything about my cases. All of my cases are related. The reason that I have six cases that are open is because, I started with one and then something else happened that was related. And I succinctly went after each person that wouldn't do what they were supposed to do. And so I just got this order back on Friday, basically from the Superior Court, questioning the trial court as to why they never docketed the notice of appeal. They tried to hide my appeal.
wow.
What they do, they'll like they try to quash things, they won't docket it, they commit mail fraud, and the Superior Court figured out that they tampered with it because after you file a notice of appeal, they issue a statement of errors that you have to file, and that's docketed on the docket, but not the notice of appeal. And so if you have a statement of errors docketed, that means that an appeal was taken, then why wasn't it docketed? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know if you understand what I'm
So
saying,
I
but
understand. I understand them trying to
yeah.
keep it quiet and burying it. But why do you think you're getting this pushback on social media platforms like X, which is supposed to be a champion of free speech and investigative journalism?
Yeah, so I think that because of its complexity, I think that people don't comprehend how complex it is and that there's no clear answer like, yeah, Josh Shapiro woke up one morning and here's the evidence and da da da. No, this was a massive, massive scandal, just like the Ukraine scandal. I mean, we have Elon Musk. the most brilliant guy in this country who builds rocket ships exposing this massive corruption. And I'm just a small little person. I started on X not too long ago. I don't have a huge platform. And the smallest misinformation that is put out can literally bury the story so fast. Like Ken Silva, he said that he debunked it because he reached out to a district attorney that apparently had said, oh, it's unbelievable without investigating. You can't debunk something if you haven't investigated and you haven't received counter evidence. So that tiny misinformation, now when you look it up on Grok is reflecting what Ken Silva said.
Yes.
And so then you have everyone saying, oh, yeah, that was debunked. No, it wasn't debunked. And there's actually a detective that reached out to me from the district attorney's office and basically said, let's schedule a time to set up, the investigation. And not just that, but the Jacksonville Secret Service sent up both of my criminal complaints to Washington. Washington sent it to Harrisburg, and the field office in Harrisburg contacted my brother and I, not this past Friday, but the Friday before. So now they're in receipt of it too. Now, I haven't heard any follow up since I talked to them on the phone. It was like a week and a half ago, but they have the information. And what I believe that they're doing now is they're taking my timeline, my information, they're putting it next to do you know who Doug Hagman is? The private investigator that President Trump hired. He
Oh,
lives
yeah.
in Well, his complaint is very similar to mine. He also says that it's organized crime. He also says that the FBI was trying to, get him to go away, not give all the information. And so, what I think that they're doing now is they're putting all these pieces together. And, they don't have to report back to me. They have the information I've given them. If they need anything, they'll reach out. I can give them screenshots. I can give them, anything they need. But they have what they need. And,
Yep.
if they do with it what they're supposed to, hopefully, President Trump will have answers. But at the end of the day, Josh Shapiro is a criminal. And even if he's not indicted for the attempted assassination, which I believe they are going to figure that out, um, there's so many other crimes that he could go to jail for. He's planning on running in 2028. This should not be the president of the United States.
Yeah.
This guy is covering up murders.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, for me, it's exposing the truth. And that's really where I'm at.
It's a hell of a mission, Hadassah. It's a hell of a
Listen, I'm so far deep in. Like, people have said to me, like, oh my God, you have to be careful. Josh Shapiro is dangerous. Listen, I am so deep into this that, like, I can't get out anymore.
well, and you would never feel. I mean, you would never feel good about yourself if you walked away from it now. Like it's too late to walk away from it and close your eyes to it. Like as long as it goes on, you're always going to have a part of your heart that went through the trauma that they put you through. And if you can see it to justice, let's see it to justice because it's horrible. And if they did it to you, how many people did they do it to and get away with that they felt comfortable enough to do it to you?
Yeah, well, so that's an interesting point. So, like, I was a licensed foster mother. If they could do that to me and bury me and do, take my kids, think about all the people that don't work for them, that have no standing, you know, can't fall back on any credentials, reputation, whatever, and they just have no chance at all. And speaking up and building these platforms for other victims to come to me. I mean, I've had people, come and tell me, oh, Lisa Wheeler, she did that in my case too. She did that in my case too. I've actually sent people to another agent. Her name is Susan Steinberg. I've sent them to her because we have the same caseworker that committed fraud. I've sent them to her, and they have body footage from their, I guess their police department was more honest than my police department. And they have that. And so, at the end of the day, I want to see these people behind bars for committing these crimes, for harming people. People don't deserve to live like this.
Well, and I know in Oklahoma they're trying to pass legislation that if you file one of these removals to the judge and it proves to be false, established to be false based off of false evidence, you would face a kidnapping charge. And so that's a huge win if they can get that law passed. I don't foresee it, but
the problem is like the police department, they know now that the CYS agents made false reports, and I proved that by showing them what really happened to those other kids. But they will not investigate them, and they've told me we can't investigate CYS. And I'm like, what do you mean? You're law enforcement. Someone commits a crime, you're supposed to protect people.
Because the attorney general won't prosecute them even if they do find something.
Correct. So the attorney general. So here's the crazy thing about the attorney general. In Pennsylvania, the attorney general at the time was Michelle Henry. Now she's the inspector general. So any complaints that you file now with the attorney general, they're not going to help with the corruption. And if you go to the inspector general, she'll just kick it back. They have all their players in place. And so in my RICO case, I told the court, I said, look, you have the attorney general representing Chris Paris, representing Josh Shapiro. They entered their appearance for them. They're representing the criminals when on their website it says that under the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Attorneys Act, they're supposed to investigate organized crime. So they're representing the criminals and not investigating the organized crime. What? So who investigates organized crime? Nobody. Nobody.
Well, I mean, and people's eyes were peaked on Pennsylvania after 2020 because of the stuffing of ballots they thought took place there in places like Philadelphia and.
Oh, they did. Just by the way, there's another whistleblower. Her name is Leah Hoops, and she uncovered the fraud in Delaware County. And Josh Shapiro sent special agents out to her home to threaten, intimidate, and stalk her. You could probably reach out to her as well. There are so many whistleblowers in Pennsylvania that are trying to have their voices heard and are being silenced, threatened, intimidated, stalked. I mean, you have J6ers that were released. I had someone reach out to me. She was released from the Oklahoma federal prison, and she got back to Pennsylvania, and they were stalking her because Josh Shapiro basically said, oh, any J6ers that are coming out, we're going to prosecute you now by the state. What the heck is going on? People are becoming pawns for this political, insanity.
I was raised a Jehovah's Witness growing up, and they had their own encounter with the Nazi Party because they wouldn't serve in the military. And so they were thrown in concentration camps as well. It's well documented. And I got to talk to some of these people that were in these concentration camps before they passed. And they talk about the stories that led up to it and the type of political persecution, the messing with their family by state employees, the school system reporting kids that wouldn't say Heil Hitler, and removing them from the parents, the poisoning of pets, just a constant harassment until the family was completely disassembled by the state. The parents were shipped off to concentration camps and the kids were put in foster care by good Nazis. And when I hear stories like yours or the ones in Georgia or, all these other stories, that's what this reminds me of. And we were this close to it being instituted on a federal level, these these types of personal attacks just because your politics or you. It's not even with you. Why I love your story, Hadassah, is that you don't even care about the politics. Like it had nothing to do with politics. It was just you saw a huge mistake being made, and you thought, well, here's one bad person. Let me just let everyone know, and they can get it investigated, and I can wipe my hands clean of the situation. And it turned into an attack on you for trying to protect 4 kids that had bruises and abuse, signs of abuse all over their bodies. But because it was inconvenient, and because of who you are and how you were raised, they just not a second thought between these people. And then as it just progressed upwards, and no one would help you, and this is not this is not a Republican Democrat thing. I've been in a Republican state that does the same thing. So it's about communities that have allowed their chief of police, their attorneys, the judges to become corrupt. And because you allow this on a local community, it transcends all the way. In Pennsylvania's case, it's not just the governor is corrupt; it's the head of the state police is corrupt. The district attorney's corrupt, the attorney general's corrupt, this judge is corrupt. It's by turning a blind eye at your local level, this is what it balloons into, and
and it's so bad. It's like in every department and agency there, and there's specific employees that are like covering up these complaints. I had noticed like over the months of I've been doing this full time, and so I've spent like 10,000 hours investigating all of this stuff. And talking to other people, I realized that there was specific individuals at the disciplinary board that when you file a complaint for, let's say, attorney misconduct, they're closing out the cases without investigating them. And President Trump made a comment the other day about a white shoe law office, and there's like 4 that come to mind. I believe that he's talking about one of them. Now, I don't have the information, and I've written the Secret Service which one I think that it is. But my first one that comes to mind is Stevens and Lee. They employ James Schwartzman. He's the Supreme Court disciplinary judge, the uncle of Sam Goldberg. He works for them too. Gerard Karam, the U.S. attorney that just resigned when President Trump won, he just went to work for them. They have all the corrupt people working there. Then you also have Marshall Dennehy. These people are receiving kickbacks to cover up these cases. And what happens is Marshall Dennehy, like here's an example from my RICO case, they'll represent these county employees, they'll represent the district attorney, and then the district attorney won't prosecute them for engaging in unlawful criminal activity while they're involved with these corruption cases.
We're turning a blind eye to the clients.
Yes. It's like they're doing each other favors. And so law enforcement and these officials and these attorneys' offices, these private attorneys' offices, they're working hand in hand. And so you have this cycle of like, none of them will get in trouble because none of them will hold each other accountable. And I've been like screaming from the rooftops, someone needs to help Pennsylvania, which is why I reached out in July, because this is insane and it's getting worse. And, I'm in Florida now. I'm sure there's corruption, but it's not to the level of Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Well, and and it's sad because like I'm originally from Iowa. I love Iowa. Iowa is the state I grew up in, but I will not live in the state of Iowa after going through what I went through with the legal system, police department, all of that. It not until it's fixed, and it's just sort of this is a problem everywhere. But with Pennsylvania, you're talking, Iowa, Kim Reynolds, what's she going to be? Charge of agriculture? She's going to give us a bad food pyramid. That's the extent of her corruption. With yours, I mean, with what's going on in Pennsylvania, you have a governor who was actively involved in covering up murder.
Yes.
His community.
Guy has no moral compass. And for him to, I'm so sorry, for him to get on public news and tell Josh and Sandy Greenberg that he is sorry for the loss of their child and to tell them that she committed suicide when the medical examiner finally came clean about it not being a suicide is so disturbing to me. Like,
It's a guy that operates knowing
disgusting.
he knows he works with impunity.
Well,
So
he's friends. He's friends with Sam Goldberg. They went to school together.
yes. Yeah, but I mean, like whoever is in control of Josh Shapiro has granted him a lot of free reign, and has as long as he takes care of these little disturbances, he can make deals with Ukraine and launder his
Well,
money.
it was Biden and Casey. Biden and Casey and Shapiro are like a three-ring circus. And what I didn't realize at the time when I was investigating Shapiro was that he had these two guys in Washington that were literally pushing him up and letting him get away with all this stuff. And so I was fighting an impossible battle. And when I went to the Secret Service about Josh Shapiro and they tried to send it up in 2024, I couldn't understand why they told them to stand down. Well, duh, because Biden was in office. Like, but once Biden got out, I called them back and I'm like, you need to send it back up because
Yes.
this is like a huge red flag.
Yeah, I always forget about Biden. I mean, all of his shell companies and corporations started with Pennsylvania and Delaware. So, I mean, it's
Yeah, they're running the racket up. Like I honestly feel so, okay, between Washington and Pennsylvania, like I felt like they were running the country.
that's very
And
interesting.
there's corruption in other states, but it was that connection through Washington funneling, like it's funneling. And Pennsylvania is one of the top most corrupt states in the country. They're known to have, they had the Buffalino family, they had organized crime. These judges, like the judges, the officials, it is so bad in the
Well,
agency, in the
it's
courts. Yeah.
it's really genius too, Hadassah, because our focus becomes, and rightfully so, the face of the crime, right? It's like the mob bosses, right? Josh Shapiro's a mob boss. The head of the state police is his own mob boss, the underboss or whatever. But
Well, no, he reports to, I feel like he reports to Shapiro, but he also reports to Biden because they're like best friends.
he's got a whole State Department of police officers underneath his control, and they all answer to him. Like
Right.
he comes to the table with his benefits as well, and the real issue here that fixes all of this is the judges. And somehow, you talk to anyone who's your local judge, no clue. No clue who's in charge of making judicial decisions in your town, in your community. And that's really where, these people, they get voted in. And there's very, in Iowa, I never saw an advertisement, political advertisement for a judge. Ever. Not on TV. Ever. It was just done. And so I think that's one area when we talk about these people that uphold the corruption. In the end, it's the judges that are upholding this corruption. And if you can get honest judges in, you have a fighting chance to get some real changes done.
Yeah, well, so okay, so when it comes to the Commonwealth Court, I told you that appears to be the most honest court right now. Um, most of their judges are Republican. Um, so like right now, from what I've seen in the RICO case, the decisions from the Commonwealth Court appear to be very neutral and not biased, which is like a breath of fresh air in Pennsylvania. But at the federal court, a lot of those judges were appointed by Biden. And so I realized that there's like this political scheme behind it. But like once I called them out on that, it seems like from the record, because I have a civil rights case there right now, It seems like they're being a lot more careful now that I've been like, hey, this is what's going on. And if you do the wrong thing, I'm going to report it. It seems like they're being more cautious now not to do the wrong thing because they know that they're being scrutinized.
Well, and the opposition is in power as well, you know?
Right.
So they're facing it from below and now above as well, and their little scheme is over, and they have to either sit tight and hope that it pans out in 4 years, or
Right.
yeah, and as and that's why your case and other cases are important, because as they have to play bipartisan politics with their rulings, they get exposed, and so that's why you can't let up on the pressure just because Trump's in office. You got to show these judges for who they really are, and that's how they get exposed. But Hadassah, I kept you for 2 hours.
I know it's been a while.
And I enjoyed it very much. You explaining everything you've been through. I want you to plug where people can find you if they have information they want to give you. Where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can find me on X, Speak Up PA. You can also find me on Facebook. It's Speak Up, and you can email me. My email is like my first name underscore, and then it's Feinberg, Feinberg @yahoo.com.
Okay. All right. Well, Hadassah, thank you so much for coming on and telling us your story.
Thank you.
All right, let me